Welcome everyone to our weekly video. You'll recognize the woman to my left, you're right, is Amy Collins, formerly known as Amy Umland Collins. She was raised here in the parish and she's been with us before. And given the environment that we've been living in with the pandemic and all of the other things kind of going on in our lives, I asked Amy if she would come on again and share some of her knowledge and her training as a counselor and her mentoring as a motherhood mentor as well. But we wanted to speak about listening. I've always thought of that phrase, why did God give us 2 ears and 1 mouth? So that we would listen twice as much as we speak. But I think nowadays, sadly, people are not always listening. Maybe we're hearing each other, but we're not really listening. So I asked her to put this together, and she had so much material that we actually divided into 3 parts. I've seen all 3 parts, and we're going to release them staggered out a little bit. But I just thought it'd be fun in this opening interview with you, if you just share with everyone what kind of the basic topic is. Because I have to say, when I listened to the first one, I said, wow, it's like a curveball. I didn't expect her to start off that way. So maybe give the highlight of those 3 things for our parishioners.
Sure, absolutely. So the highlight, I would say, there are 3 parts. The first part, as Father Stephen said, kind of throws you a curveball in regards to, it's not about listening to other people right away. What we start off doing is building a foundation for listening, and that starts with listening to the voices in your head, which might sound a little crazy, but when you listen to the video, it'll make sense.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And then the second part is about listening to what we're actually saying when we're speaking, the messages we're putting out in the world, the energy we're putting out in the world. And there's some fun exercises in both of those videos. And then the last video is actually talking about listening to other people and how we can become better at doing that. And there's also a phrase, a tagline in that last part that will be helpful to implement on a daily basis, which adds some, it's very easy to implement, and it just helps us all say, okay. So you'll have to tune in to find out what that is.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful overview. I didn't listen to a word you were saying, but...
Sorry, what did you say? I wasn't
But it's really good material. And I think one of the things I walked away with, which I thought was so true, where you said that listening is a verb, it's an action, it's something that we can actually improve upon. And I have to say, after listening to the 3 segments, it really gave me pause and made me think a little bit, how well am I listening? I think I'm a good listener generally, but I think like all of us, we can always be better at doing that. So I really do thank you for taking the time. I do hope all of you will not only watch her video, but also try to put it into practice and share it with other friends. It's a great 3-part series. So the first one you're seeing now, November 2nd, then next week you'll see it on the 9th, and then the final installment on the 16th.
But they'll be available if somebody catches this on the 3rd.
Oh yeah,
they'll be available online.
Correct.
On the St. Elizabeth.
Yeah, so each one will be on our home page for 1 full week on the home page, and then it's stored in, I think, Kath, what do we call it? Father Stephen's talks or Father Stephen's videos. So even the older ones, will be up there as well, just like you can see. So please enjoy this first segment. I think is about 13 minutes, right?
Yeah, the first segment's about 13, 14 minutes.
Second one's like 10.
And then the last one is maybe 16.
Yeah.
But they're all just, it's really important, I think, because listening is the basis of all meaningful relationships. Because when you listen to each other, that's how we learn about one another.
Correct.
Everyone has a story.
Amen. Yeah. Amen. Well, thank you very much for sharing your story and sharing your treasures and your talents with us. And when you see Amy in Mass, just tell her thank you. Or if you weren't listening, then just walk right by her.
Exactly.
Anyway, God bless. Only kidding. Bye.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Amy Collins, and I am also a parishioner here at St. Elizabeth's. In fact, I grew up at St. Elizabeth's. So Anyway, but I am here today because I have spent decades learning about and studying and teaching self-development. And so our topic today is the first part of a 3-part series, and the topic is listening. And so I have some notes here, and we're going to start this first session about something a little bit not the normal perspective in regards to how we would think of listening. We're actually, because first of all, people think of listening as, oh, well, I'm not a good listener, or she's a really good listener. Well, the good news is that listening is actually a skill. And so that means that if we practice it and we become more aware of what it takes to become a good listener, we can improve, which is awesome. It's awesome for everybody around, right? Including ourselves, because listening is the basis of all meaningful relationships. In fact, there's a quote that says, listening is so close to being loved that it's hard to tell the two apart. And that comes from a gentleman who started Urban Confessional. Anyway, back to our lesson at hand. The first lesson is going to be about 2 voices that we all hear. Okay, so before we're able to become better listeners to other people, we need to understand how we listen and which voice we're listening to. So you guys are thinking, what is she talking about? Voices, right? But come on, give me a minute and I'll explain. Let me bring you back to a time when we were about 4 or 5 years old, okay? And so we're just starting kindergarten. So let's think about how we are carefree at 4 or 5 years old, right? And we walk into school and maybe we're wearing a pair of pink and purple polka dotted leggings, and we're singing and we're excited for the day, and we're just being who we are, right? We haven't ever thought about being anybody but who we were born to be. And maybe a well-meaning teacher or even a well-meaning parent or maybe a peer says something to us like, stop singing. You can't sing. Shh, be quiet. Or maybe someone says, pink and purple polka dotted leggings, those are for babies. Ew. Right? And in that very moment, our inner critic is born. What we're going to call our voice of judgment is born. And so what happens is the next time we go to sing carefree and joyfully, we hear a voice say, no, shh, don't sing. You can't sing. No one wants to hear you sing. Or we go to put on our favorite pair of pink and purple polka dotted leggings, and a voice inside of our head, right? Because now it's in our head, and that voice says, oh, don't wear those. No, I'm trying to protect you. Don't look like a fool. You don't want to be made fun of again. And so we don't wear them. And we don't sing. And so this voice of judgment, which disguises itself as a good friend of ours, right? It doesn't want us to be embarrassed or to look like a fool. This voice starts to actually drown out the voice that we were actually born with and that is truly inside of us, which is called the voice of wisdom. So the voice of judgment starts to put up these bricks, right? And kind of say, no, don't take that chance. You don't want to look like a fool. Or, well, no, you tried that once and it didn't quite work. And hence our voice of judgment is born. So those are the two voices we're going to talk about. And again, I have my notes here. So, children are excellent examples of being carefree, right? And over time, that inner child gets hurt and pays too much attention to our voice of judgment. And so the voice of wisdom is buried. So can any of you relate to that, right? Like you hear that little voice that says, no, 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 don't do that. You're not good enough. Or, you might look kind of foolish if you try wearing that at your age, right? Or something along those lines. Or, oh, you'll never get away with that, right? And so we call this the voice of judgment, our inner critic, or in a class that I taught, we called it our inner gremlin, right? And as we get older, unfortunately, that voice of judgment becomes louder and louder and actually holds us back from positive growth. And ironically, it's the voice that is most often encouraged by the outside world. So we need to be aware of that. So what we're going to do is I'd like you to just grab a piece of paper. It could just be even a sticky note and a pen. And very quickly, don't let your voice of judgment discourage you from doing this. We're going to do a quick exercise. And what you're going to do is quickly draw that voice of judgment. Just draw it out and name it. And name it a name other than your own name. And then write down 3 things that it always says to you, right? So just take a couple minutes and do that. And then we're going to come back. Welcome back. And now you have this little sticky note drawing, or whatever you drew, this little drawing of that inner voice, right? Mine looked kind of like a big blob, right? And it's so funny because everyone's looks just a little like dark and drab and heavy, right? And what you're going to do now, the challenge is to recognize when this voice of judgment starts to speak up. You're now going to be, first step is always awareness. So you're now going to be aware and say, hey, wait a minute. I recognize you. You're the voice of judgment. Talk to the hand. I don't want to listen to you because you hold me back. You cause me to harshly judge myself, to harshly judge others. You cause me nothing but drama. I get all stirred up, right? No solutions, right? So the inner critic we have here, it's harmful, it's dysfunctional, defensive, right? And it's, it just constantly blames and shames you, right? Sound familiar? It stops you from positive growth, but it pretends to be your friend because it pretends to want to protect you. So be aware of it. So that's the first step. Now you're aware of it. So what do we do when we're aware of it? That's great. The next thing we do is we start to learn how to unfold and encourage that voice of wisdom to start to speak up and step out again, right? And that voice of wisdom we want to encourage because that voice of wisdom, otherwise known as our intuition, our gut, right? So that voice of wisdom is calm, it's cool, it's straightforward, it offers us solutions, it helps us, become a little bit more curious. Like, why is my reaction so defensive right now? Or why is that person getting so frustrated? It calls on compassion. That's our voice of wisdom. And so we need to learn the difference. So for example, if someone says, so maybe you're being hard on yourself, right? Let's give an example. You're being hard on yourself because you're feeling overwhelmed with your to-do list and you're not getting things done and you're procrastinating and your voice of judgment starts just harping on you to the point where you kind of freeze, or you go out and you get the ice cream, or you just go take a nap, right? Instead, what you want to do, because that voice of judgment is saying, yeah, you're no good at this stuff. You always procrastinate, just give it up. You want to say, talk to the hand, and you want to tune in to your voice of wisdom. And your voice of wisdom will not get defensive, right? it will instead say, hey, yeah, you know what? That's good feedback. I do have some issues with time management. I do have a hard time getting things done, right? Because it can take constructive feedback and it says, yeah, you know what? Let's set up a plan here. Let me look to get 3 things done every day. And start small. And start with a solution-based answer to your situation, right? And it'll say, hey, now you're getting these 3 things done every day. Let's move on and add 1 or 2 more. Let's take your time and figure out how we can help you feel more comfortable with time management. Maybe you read a book. Maybe you ask some friends what works for them, right? You take a little bit of what everybody says and you make it your own, right? That's what my dad has always said to me. So anyway, what's really key is that the voice of wisdom is calm and cool and collective. There is no emotional charge. When you tune into it, there is no emotional charge. Whereas the voice of judgment, it's all drama, right? Come on, we can all relate to that, okay? So what I want you to do is look at these 2 slides and think about which voice you want to tune into, right? Because if we find we're constantly tuning into our voice of judgment and we're judging ourselves so harshly, then most likely we're judging those around us harshly and we're not really listening to them and their message because we're not even able to listen to ourselves, right? So think of it as a tennis match. So you have the voice of judgment on one side and the voice of wisdom on the other side. And they're going back and forth. They start, now that the voice of judgment knows you're aware of it, it's going to try to roar its head even more. So you start to hear it coming out and you see it going back and forth. The good news is, ladies and gentlemen, is you have the power. You get to control who wins the match. And it takes practice. So don't let your voice of judgment beat you up if you keep falling for it, right? Because that's what it wants you to do. It wants you to stay stuck. It doesn't want you to grow. So remember, every day is a new day. Now that you're aware of those 2 voices, you can tune in to both of them. You can start to say, okay, this voice of judgment is not in me. It's outside of me. Post that sticky note somewhere. Post it on your refrigerator. Post it on your bathroom mirror where you see it. And you could say, no, you're not in me. You've been created from outside and it sounds like you're within me, but no. Talk to the hand. I'm going to go within and I'm going to calmly approach this situation. And that's the voice I'm going to choose to listen to. Because when we start to have a sense of compassion towards ourselves and we start with a sense of curiosity, then we're better able to listen to who we truly are. And that's when we establish a foundation to then better listen to other people. So on that note, the challenge is now start each day and throughout the day. Just reset if you need to. Tune into your voice of wisdom. Okay? Best of luck. I will see you again for part 2. Take care.